Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's great to be back in Rahway with Mayor Giacobbe. As a former mayor myself, I often say it's the hardest job in government. Everybody knows the mayor, everybody's got a peace of mind for the mayor, and everybody's going to let you know it. I really appreciate your service, and so thank you for hosting us today and being with us. We also have Cynthia Rice and Anisha Ghali, two longtime champions in their respective roles for families and children who call New Jersey home. I thank you for sharing your expertise with us and for all that you do day in and day out to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. We also have two parents, I understand, Latasha Huff and Jennifer Boone, who understand the challenges of finding good affordable childcare like the services that are offered here at the Helping Hands Learning Academy. I know it's a constant juggling act to balance school, parenting, childcare, with all the other demands of life, so thank you all for being here as well. We're here today because last week, with their craven default on America bill, House Republicans voted to put parents, families, and childcare providers on the chopping block. They voted to cut nearly $2 billion, that's right, with a B, $2 billion from the Child Care and Development Block Grant Program. That's on top of a $2.6 billion cut to Head Start programs. Think about that. Almost $2 billion in aid to child care providers gone. More than $2.5 billion in Head Start funding gone. At some point, you have to ask yourself, is there no shame? Is there no shame? Because the one thing we cannot afford is to default on our children's future. And that's what these cuts do. Do they really think that the way forward is to crush working families with cold, cruel, and callous spending cuts? And their numbers just don't add up. Cuts of this magnitude would make it immensely harder, if not impossible, for parents like Latasha and Jennifer to find high-quality, affordable child care. Cuts of this magnitude would devastate providers like Anisha, who already struggle to compete with the salaries offered by big box retailers. If these cuts went through and the subsidy levels reduced, she asked Cynthia, how will I retain my current staff? How will I ensure that my program is high quality? It's a question that every House Republican should be asking themselves. And I say that because only they voted for this legislation. Every single member who voted for these cuts, especially those who brag about supporting family values, should come here to see what family values is all about. Look these parents and these providers in the eye and explain why they want to hurt their families. They should explain why they want to hurt those who provide a benefit to our children in our communities. It's unconscionable, it's immoral, and in my view, it's just outright wrong. And I, for one, will not rest and won't stop until we successfully protect child care funding and Head Start funding in our federal budget. Last Congress, as part of the American Rescue Plan, Democrats approved an additional $40 billion in stabilization grants through the Child Care Development Block Grant Program. We provided this funding at a time when the child care industry was in desperate need as a result of the pandemic. I went to visit some of those child cares in different parts of our state, and they said, we cannot keep the doors open if we don't get some help. And in the days since, provider after provider has told me that it was the difference between shutting down operations and keeping their doors open. That right there is the difference between our two parties in Congress. Democrats have consistently voted to keep child care affordable, accessible, and available. Republicans, meanwhile, vote to cut funding so that more than 200,000 children would lose access to this vital benefit. And this, in addition to other provisions in their bill that would impose draconian work requirements for Medicaid recipients, would decimate funding for nutrition assistance. We saw how, in addition to everything else that is done here, there is a nutrition component to help families have food dispensed once a week. And it would slash health care benefits for veterans, people who served our country in uniform and risked their life. At its heart, the House Republican Default on America bill is a cruel bill. It is a bill designed to inflict damage on the most vulnerable, on Americans who serve our communities, who serve our country, and who rely on their fellow neighbors. And in this warped and misguided attempt at fiscal responsibility, it's a slap in the face to every working and middle-class family who wants to send their child to a high-quality daycare, one, for the learning and the interaction, the social elements of it, two, so that they themselves can be able to work and be productive in our society. Now, we have a word in Spanish to say to people when they want to hold our economy hostage in order to slash federal funding. It's called basta. I think some in Italian may understand that. It means enough. Enough. Enough to hurting the most vulnerable among us. Enough to a default on America's bill that's a non-starter for New Jerseyans. And enough to anyone who wants to vote to roll back the progress we've achieved and kowtow to demands of the right wing. So I know what child care means. I was a mayor in Union City. I started a daycare, an award-winning child care program, an intergenerational approach where we took seniors who had retired and trained them and became certified daycare workers. We took mothers, some who were on welfare, and gave them skills, abilities, and education so that they could break the cycle of poverty, and we had a high-quality place to have their children be taken care of. And I know it was a high-quality place because my children went there as well. And I remember dropping them off in the morning, occasionally getting yelled at because I dropped them a little late, but nonetheless, dropping them every morning and knowing the feeling of being able to have your children in a place that ultimately is safe, sound, secure, educationally motivating, and caring. That's what we want for every child. That's what we want for every parent. So I'm honored to be here standing in the breach alongside longtime champions for our state's child care system. It's a worthy fight, a fight truly for the next generation and the investments that they deserve. With that, let me bring to the podium an incredible fighter for children in our state. Been doing this a fair amount of time, not a long time, but a fair amount of time in her advocacy, and that's Cynthia Rice, the Advocates for the Children of New Jersey. Cynthia.